Draft school is back in session as summer might still be heating up with Mel Kiper Jr. and me, Field Yates, here to break down the best players that you need to know for the 2026 NFL Draft. That's coming up. As always, we are taking your fan questions. We are responding to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live as First Draft starts right now. We are back. April may be 9 months away, but America can only do without Mel Kiper Jr. for so long. Mel, my man, how are you?
Feeling it couldn't be better, pal. This really signifies the start of the football season. When we're back, we're off the boats, the kayaks, the jet skis. Summer's over, Field. Now, I want John Facenda's voice. I want to hear that voice of John Facenda, though, that football, those cool, crisp days of the fall, right? Weather becoming a factor. So, hey, let's get off the beach, right? Let's get away from Orange Crushes, and let's get the football, pal.
Over-under on Orange Crushes consumed this summer. We going north of 75 or no?
I'd put it at 100.
100?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Mel Kiper Jr. knows how to party. That much is for sure. By the way, big thanks to those of you that are watching us now on ESPN2. And of course, we're also available on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. And Mel, we live for the NFL draft. We think about it year round. And I think more and more people are starting to fall into that category as well. So while, of course, there's so much left to be determined between now and April 23rd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's never too soon to start talking NFL drafts. But one last housekeeping note, QR code on your screen, find that, scan it. You get the entire playlist for First Draft. As we think about the 2026 NFL Draft, Mel, early impressions. And by the way, everything we're talking about today in July should be taken with a block of salt, not a grain of salt, Mel. Not because we haven't put the work in, but because so much can change. Think Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels and players ascending or falling down boards. This is what happens during the process. First thing that comes to mind to you when I say 2026 NFL Draft is what?
Uncertainty. Is Arch Manning going to be back at Texas in 2026? Will we have a phenomenal year and kind of go against the grain a bit with the Manning family and not go back to Texas, but go into the NFL draft and maybe be the number one pick overall? I mean, he's got to go to Ohio State August 30th, right?
Yep.
We're talking about big boards. I want to wait until that game's over. Because it's a lot of hype. And I give Arch a lot of credit. He said, hey, it's a lot of hype about me, but I haven't proven anything, right?
Yep.
This is a year to prove it. And what does he do after this season's over? Go back or go into the draft? A lot of guys coming off injury. What did they do? How did they perform? Transfers all over the place. Underachievers last year that had ton of physical talent, but didn't produce the results expected. Do they put it all together this year? We're going to be talking next week about the most intriguing guys, okay?
Yeah.
Those are some of those guys are going to be intriguing for one reason or another, and a lot of guys fall into that category. I'll tell you this, Field. I went through it this morning. This could be a really good draft.
Yeah.
If a lot of these guys come back healthy and are ready to roll, and these transfers settle in, and a lot of these guys go into the draft rather than going back, we could have a loaded 2026 NFL draft if everything falls into place.
Yeah, Mel, my first thought when it pertains to the 2026 NFL Draft is the quarterback class, because it's very natural for us to always focus on quarterbacks, right? We have potential for strength in numbers at this time last year, and it's kind of impossible to remember exactly what we were feeling about the draft class because the entire season transpired, then the guys were drafted, we now know who they're playing for in the NFL, and we've even seen some of these guys at training camp. But it feels like the number of quarterbacks right now, late July, that could credibly be top 5 or top 10 prospects by the time it's all said and done is a much larger group compared to where we were last year, where we thought going into last season, Shedeur Sanders, maybe Cam Ward, those guys could be jockeying for top billing, but it was clear then that the number of can't miss quarterbacks was very small. This year may not have 10 can't miss quarterbacks, but there might be 10 guys who could grow to that level pretty early on this season. So the idea today, Mel, is not just quarterbacks, but there are a lot of quarterbacks that will come up. But I picked 10 players that I think kind of going into the college football season feel like players that could define next year's draft. And let's talk about the player, Mel, that will define the draft if he comes out. That's Arch Manning, the quarterback from Texas, who is going into his redshirt sophomore season. Mel has hardly started for Texas at all. He did have one game last year when Quinn Ewers was unavailable due to injury. He started against UT San Antonio. He had 5 total touchdowns. He is, of course, the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning, the son of Cooper Manning, the grandson of Arch Manning. Mel, it's a small sample size, but what we're doing right now is projecting. And I don't think it's a reach to say that when you project what Arch Manning could become, it's the highest upside player of anybody that I have studied so far in this class. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think Arch Manning certainly has a team that I think could win a national championship this year. They are one of the main contenders. They are really awesome on both sides of the ball from a talent standpoint. The offensive line has to come together. C.J. Baxter coming back from that injury at that running back spot with Wisner gives them that 1-2 punch. They are a team ready to really go to war. And really, I think the first week, that's why I said, let's see what happens at the shoe in Columbus, Texas at Ohio State in week 1, when you have Julian Sayin at Ohio State taking over. Ohio State lost a ton of guys, right, after winning that national title last year. And Texas with Arch Manning in that spotlight game on August 30th is going to be phenomenal. The legs, and again, you mentioned it, the competition. He said it, hey, I've been hyped to the hilt. I'm proving anything. This is his year to show what he's capable of doing with a talent level around him that's outstanding if that offensive line comes together. So it's really Arch Manning. I thought about Penn State maybe for a national championship. Still debating that, haven't finalized. But Texas right now, maybe number 1 on that list of a team that I think has everything in place to win a national title. If Arch Manning does that, we'll be talking about him all year. We'll be talking about him again in 2026 because normally the Mannings want to have 2 full years as a starter, not just one as a sample size in preparation for the NFL. You mentioned some of those teams, Louisiana Monroe, Colorado State, UTSA, Mississippi State, all these different teams. This is his year to really shine, starting out with the national champion Buckeyes on their field at the shoe in Columbus.
Yeah, Mel, and we know that things can change pretty rapidly, but I do have a lot of confidence in the player. I think a lot of people have seen Arch play already. You mentioned the athleticism. He's not your typical Manning quarterback, right? Peyton and Eli worked almost exclusively from the pocket. Arch is a very, very athletic quarterback.
Who's his father, Field? It's Cooper. It's right. Cooper. Cooper was a wide receiver at Ole Miss till he got hurt, right? So he thinks that his mom, he doesn't take after Eli and Peyton, his uncles. It's Cooper more so, that wide receiver, that ability to run and be able to be that multi-dimensional dual threat quarterback is what Arch Manning brings to the table.
Yep, and I think he has accuracy to all levels. There's no throw he can't make. He's a very twitchy quarterback as well, moves very suddenly in his upper half. I think you need to add a little bit more to the frame in terms of body armor. He's not quite as impressive on the hoof as a guy that we'll talk about in just a few moments here, Mel, who plays quarterback elsewhere in the SEC. But Arch has all the tools in his bag. You've kind of hinted at this, Mel. I would just say that talking to scouts that were in Austin last year, visiting Texas, the impression they were given is in line with what you discussed, that if you had to bet on Arch coming out in the 2026 or the 2027 NFL draft, 2027 would be the favorite, but Texas wins the national championship. Maybe the New Orleans Saints, where his grandfather was the last quarterback taken in the first round, have the number 1 overall pick. Certainly wouldn't shock you if Arch Manning thinks long and hard about coming out next year. All right, next up, and not far behind Mellon, I could have made the case for this guy as the most impressive prospect I've seen. Again, projecting ahead, LaNorris Sellers, quarterback from South Carolina. Mel, is there a player, when I'm talking body type, that you first think of when LaNorris Sellers is on tape?
Hey, Josh Allen. I mean,
there it is.
I mean, that big, strong, athletic, mobile, tough, hard-nosed, can do anything from a throw the football at any point on the field standpoint to run people over or run past them. So you saw the Clemson game, the finale, what he was able to do, take a play that breaks down and turn it into a huge play with his legs. The problem I think that he has to work through is the nuances of playing the quarterback position, holding the ball a little too long, taking some sacks, relying too much on that frame. Just get the ball out a little quicker. And if he does that, he certainly has the weapons around him to do some damage. He was sacked a lot. They said, hold the ball a little too long at times. Learn from that. Remember, 1 year as a starter, Field, he's still very young.
He's young.
Sellers is a very young quarterback. In fact, I think I have it here. I was looking at, I always go through, Field, when I'm doing these guys, and I look at the ages of these quarterbacks and some of these guys, and I got LaNorris Sellers. You're talking about a kid who is young, 20 years of age right now. Didn't turn 21 until June, so he's turned 20. So he's a young quarterback with 1 year.
He'd be a 20-year-old drafted. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, he was 70% or better in a lot of games last year.
Yeah.
Had a couple of games where he wasn't, but he was pretty accurate with his throws. And you talk about that physical gifts that he brings to that quarterback position. If he develops and improves in the area I talked about, you're talking about a guy who looks like a screams top pick, one of the top picks of the draft.
Totally agree, Mel. The in-pocket movement, the out-of-pocket movement is ridiculous. The game against Clemson, which is a huge game for South Carolina and Clemson every single year, and especially last year when both teams were so good. Clemson, of course, made the college football playoff. South Carolina was amongst the first teams out. LaNorris Sellers was like almost literally carrying defensive players on his back out of the pocket. He has incredible strength across his entire body. And no surprise, he has a rocket arm. He's still developing as a passer, as this compact stroke. There's going to be some growth and some room for improvement there. But the number of wow plays that LaNorris Sellers brings to the table is higher than any other quarterback that I studied in the very early goings so far in this process. And this begs the question from Breschlow on Twitter, who says the early projection for first-round quarterbacks, in your opinion, unlike recent years, this is Breschlow's words, top guys are not the ones with 4 or 5 years of experience, many just 3. Good observation. Anyhow, his guess is 5 quarterbacks in the first round. All right, Mel, why not make a prediction in late July that we're going to hold you to? You think 4 or 5 is the right range for first-round quarterbacks next year?
Still to be determined. You can't really make an accurate assumption on that because what's Arch going to do? What's Sam Leavitt at Arizona State, who we'll be talking about? What is he going to do? And now he'll have 2 full years at Arizona State. What is he going to do? What's Nico going to be at UCLA leaving Tennessee, right? I mean, there's a lot of question marks there. And then does Garrett Nussmeier, who we've been waiting to take off, and say, hey, I'm the guy. I'm kind of like a Joe Burrow-like player. But what happens at LSU? We'll be talking about some of the changes there. Fernando Mendoza goes from Cal to Indiana. Does he become a first-round draft choice? So right now it's too iffy. It would be a guessing game. 5 certainly could be a good number. But that's dependent upon the decisions of some of these elite guys led by Arch and Leavitt. What they decide to do will certainly impact that number. And do guys like Mendoza, play like a first rounder, perform at that level? What happens with those guys? I don't have a crystal ball on that, but I think 5 is a fair number right now.
I agree on that, Mel. 5 is a good number because there are other names that, again, I don't think they're there yet, but like a Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, who I think has a lot of potential, just got to put it all together. There's a list of players that fall into that category of not quite can't miss yet, but you can see a pathway to becoming a pretty coveted prospect. All right, so let's stay in the state of South Carolina. We just talked about how South Carolina and Clemson had this huge game last year. The other quarterback in the game is Cade Klubnik, Mel. Who, Cade, by the way, outstanding passer. He had 36 passing touchdowns last season. That's 3rd in the FBS. He had 7 rushing touchdowns. LaNorris Sellers, by the way, 647 rushing yards, to a testament to his athletic ability. Cade, Mel, to me, is different than the first 2 quarterbacks, not as physically imposing. He's a good athlete, makes some really good plays innovatively when he's under duress. Probably more of like a strike-throwing passer than what I was talking about with LaNorris Sellers, who has more wow and more arm strength and zip, but maybe not quite as like refined on the rhythm passing as Cade Klubnik is. But another guy, Mel, who tons of experience, great intangibles, brings something to the table as an athlete as well. Could easily see Cade Klubnik putting himself in that top 5 pick consideration.
That's a little high, a little rich for me. I know Matt Miller was talking about it, maybe number 1 pick overall, I believe, in a mock draft I saw a couple weeks ago. Klubnik athletically, Field is outstanding. The RPOs, I mean, he is a tough, athletic quarterback. And I think when you look at the improvement, he went from plus 10 touchdown interception differential to plus 30. If you saw the first half of the games to the second half, there was very little change. He was good from the get-go till the end, and he improved dramatically over what we saw a couple years ago. So for Cade Klubnik to have the ability with Williams and Wesco, guys around him, okay? Blake Miller going back for another year on the offensive line really helps. But I think Clemson, we're going to see it right off the bat. I mean,
they're loaded up now.
Yeah, LSU at Clemson. LSU at Clemson that first week. We talked about Texas going to Ohio State, right? How about that matchup with Nussmeier and Klubnik on the same field? And we're going to have a chance to get a good evaluation game for those guys there. But, Klubnik's one of those guys in that mix to be a first-round draft choice come late April.
All right, so let's go to one more quarterback that I put in this first tier, Mel. And again, we're actually having this conversation. This is July 30th, right? So we're like, a month away from college football starting. So a lot can change. But you're doing a projection game, right? Like, I'm imagining what the best version of these guys looks like. And I think Sam Leavitt from Arizona State is a name that has a lot of pressure on him because they were the surprise entrant into the college football playoffs last year was Arizona State. It's going to be difficult to repeat their success because I think probably pound for pound, they're less talented than the teams that we have talked about so far in Texas and South Carolina and Clemson. But there's a lot I liked about Sam's game. Let me start here. I usually talk about like a physical trait, but this is kind of a demeanor trait. This kid's got moxie. He has got some big gamer energy, does Sam Leavitt. That team last year punched above its weight, I think in part or large part because of Sam Leavitt and Cam Scatamo, who were the two focal points, or the two primary focal points of the offense. Completed 62% of his passes last year, just under 3,000 passing yards for Sam Leavitt, but 24 touchdowns as a thrower, 5 rushing touchdowns as well. Little bit of Bo Nix to him, Mel, when it comes to like the razzle-dazzle ability. Not as sudden as Bo was. I mean, Bo was excellent athlete as well. Not quite on that level, but I really thought there was something to the toughness, the intangibles of Sam Leavitt, good arm, good size, good mobility, that I don't think it'll be easy to repeat their success from last year. But this certainly is the kind of kid that can give you some confidence that Arizona State will be a force in some way this season.
He's one of those guys. Field can he build on what we saw? He went Michigan State to Arizona State. It was kind of that under the radar. Nobody was really hyping him up. Nobody was expecting much at all from Kenny Dillingham's Sun Devils, right? And they go out and they start winning games. They start building confidence, and they were the hunter. Now they're the hunted, as they say, right? It's a little bit different. Kenny Dillingham talked about that. Now we're the team everybody's gearing for. We were just catching people by surprise last year, right? Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, was phenomenal. Now, he got hurt. Didn't play with the shoulder in those final two games, right? The Big 12 championship game didn't play, and in the Texas game didn't play. Sam Leavitt, you mentioned moxie. I mean, this kid can run with the football, and he runs hard, and he runs with determination. Good mechanics throwing the football. He's, about 6'1", 6'1 and a half in that area. We have to see how tall he is. He's not 6'3", 6'4". Sam Leavitt, in years, only 20 years of age as well, but in year 2, at the helm of this Kenny Dillingham offense with Jordan Tyson, who will be a highly rated wide receiver. Cam Scatterbo's gone, and that was the guy he relied on heavily. This kid had a phenomenal year. Was a Heisman candidate for a reason. Scatterbo made so much of a difference in terms of defenses and how they're going to attack that Sun Devil offense, took pressure off of Sam. Now, without having that great all-purpose type back, that workhorse, how does Sam deal with expectations, not having his guy in the backfield? That's going to be really interesting to see if he builds on that. Now, guess what? He may not even be in this draft. He's got that option if things don't fall properly to go back to Arizona State for another year.
I'm with you, Mel. And so let's move along from quarterbacks to non-quarterbacks, because there may be more quarterbacks that we discuss at some point, probably pretty quickly. No more in my top 10 for right now, with apologies to Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Aller and a couple of others. Fernando Mendoza as well, who you talked about now over at Indiana after a couple of seasons at Cal. But sometimes the non-quarterbacks are fun to discuss right now, Mel, because you're getting like a quarterback inflation. Now we're doing the opposite. Caleb Downs, I believe, the Ohio State safety, is the cleanest evaluation of any prospect in the class at this moment. What I mean by that is I am most certain that Caleb Downs is a top-tier, top-shelf prospect for his position than I am of any other player, any player in the entire draft class. I suppose things could happen, but it'd be very surprising to me for a healthy Caleb Downs to not be the highest drafted safety in the draft next year, assuming he comes out. He is the brother of Josh Downs, the Colts wide receiver who played at North Carolina. He did not want to sort of follow directly in his brother's footsteps. He began in Alabama, basically got all the freshman accolades at Alabama, transfers to Ohio State. This past season was remarkable. First team All-American, helped them win the national championship. Mel, I don't know. Is there a weakness in this game? I see a guy who has excellent range, can really defend the pass in the middle and deep portions of the field, but I also see a guy who is a total hammer in the running game as well. He's making plays all over the box, physical, nasty, instinctive. I think this kid is about as good as it gets in this year's draft.
He is. And I'll tell you, how about the father, Gary Downs? I scouted Gary Downs, running back at NC State. It was a third-round pick to the Giants, right? Dre Bly's his uncle, Dre Bly, cornerback out of North Carolina as well. And then Josh Downs, his brother, with the Indianapolis Colts, also from North Carolina. So, athletic family. This kid from day one for Nick Saban. And you're not playing from day one for Nick Saban in that secondary at Alabama, unless you're smart and you get it. He played as a freshman Field like a 4-year senior. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
He looked so good at Alabama. He knew as much as what everybody on that defense was expected to know and more as a true freshman. He was a true sophomore last year, came in there with Knowles, the defensive coordinator, did a heck of a job at Ohio State. They won a national title. Now he's back for year 2, year 3 overall at the collegiate level. You said clean prospect. I look at a guy who, you talk about go Bowen, okay? You go Bowen, you get that strike. You see how those pins drop when you hit it perfectly? Those pins just drop, right? Yeah. It's not a spare, it's a strike. And everything goes down. It's like when he hits, the guy, it just drop. It's like a strike. And he seems like he has that sixth sense about what's going on the field. He sees things before everybody else does. And when he arrives on the scene, you're going down. Yeah. And for that, he's versatile. He can cover, he can tackle, space, behind the line, doesn't matter where it is. So for me, Caleb Downs, you could make an argument he's as good as any player in this draft. Yeah. And that safety value, Kyle Hamilton with the Baltimore Ravens, what he did at Notre Dame, I got to believe I can't see Caleb Downs getting out of the top 5. I really can't. He's too good a football player.
Yeah, I think this will come down to a very healthy debate about positional value. Right now, we go all the way back to 1992, Eric Turner coming out of Syracuse.
Second overall
pick to the Cleveland Browns. By the way, that was me pulling a U right there. You'll drop some guy you played at Washington State, Eastern Washington State back in 1975 and expect me to remember who he is. And of course, I can't even slide one past you with Eric Turner. But how many highly drafted safeties have we had since then? Certainly some, but it's not the position that typically fills up the top 5 picks in the draft. That being said, Mel, man alive, is it hard to imagine him dropping that far, right? I mean, he would be the instant impact game-changing safety that every defensive coordinator would bang the gavel for in a draft room if he's available and your team is on the clock somewhere in the first 4 to 6 picks. That's just how I feel about Caleb Downs right now. Not too far behind him in my overall rankings is Peter Woods, Clemson, and I'm going to say defensive lineman now because we'll list him as a defensive tackle in our positional rankings, but the guy kind of plays everywhere. If you saw Peter Woods in stretching warm-ups before a game, he looks like a defensive tackle who just so happens to be able to play pretty much anywhere on the defensive front. You can put him as an edge rusher, defensive end, defensive tackle, nose tackle. He looks the part now. He is a violent, havoc-wreaking defensive tackle. Now, the sack production this past year was just 3 sacks. Maybe the numbers don't tell the story here on Peter Woods. He just feels like the kind of player, Mel, that when an offensive line coach or run game coordinator or even a play caller on offense is thinking about the week ahead, your protection plan starts with, how do we slow down that guy? He was all over the place for that Clemson defense last year, even if he didn't have 15 sacks to show for it.
Yeah, I think they have to define his role. We moved outside, inside 3 technique to me. He's got his weight down. He claims about 300, was a little heavier last year, got nutrition. He says he's in the best shape of his life as a football player. Define that role. They brought in, now Dabo's been really, I think, stubborn about, and I would say stubborn. He just says, hey, I believe in my guys. I believe in my recruits. I'm loyal to my recruits. We develop players here. I don't want to bring too many guys in from the portal. He hasn't really believed in the portal, but he went and got Will Help. Will Help comes over from Purdue. He had with 10 tackles for loss and 5 sacks for the Boilermakers. Now he's a defensive end opposite Parker, who's a hell of a player, right?
DJ Parker, yep.
DJ Parker, who's an elite
Almost
player.
made my list, yep.
Exactly. And then you got Capehart, Demonte Capehart, Vic Burley. Now you got Peter Woods. So you got some rotation going there. But to me, he can get after the quarterback from the interior. You got now Help with Parker on the outside. You got Sammy Brown. You got Wade Woodash. You got Avian Terrell and Khalil Barnes in that secondary. Yep. I'll say it right now. Dabo's built this football team through loyalty to my guys. Not many transfers at all. Like I say, Help's one of the few, right? Coming in. Yeah. This Clemson team plays LSU, right? LSU at Clemson, week 1, August 30th, right? How about that matchup? You got a rebuilt LSU offensive line for Garrett Nussmeier. No Will Campbell, no Emory Jones, no Garrett Dellinger, right? No Miles Frazier, and no Mason Taylor at tight end. Going up against this Clemson defense, I just rattled off maybe 8 of the 11 starters that are outstanding players. Wow, what a matchup that's going to be. You talk about that game, LSU at Clemson. It's a 7:30 kickoff Eastern time after we already watched Texas at Ohio State with a high noon kickoff at the Shoe. Week 1 is going to be really a good week to see how these quarterbacks and how these overall prospects perform.
I agree, Mel. They are absolutely loaded. It will not be for lack of talent if that team does not do damage this season. We don't have to get into a whole NIL and transfer portal discussion right now, but I did find the comments from Mike Locksley, the Maryland head coach, pretty fascinating recently. How he talked about how he kind of lost the locker room last year, where he had some of the veterans that were loyal to the program, and then he had some of the new guys, the young bucks, who were getting paid big money, and it can create a divide. Perhaps that is the method to Dabo Swinney's madness of largely staying out of the transfer.
And Field, I'll say this: this is the year. This Clemson team is built for 2025. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what they're built for. And this is the year. A lot of these guys are going to be moving on to the NFL. And you don't have, maybe you have to go to the portal at some point. But this is a year where we'll see if Dabo can take this Clemson Tiger team, get off to that great start, knock off LSU, who's had a rough start the last few years. Brian Kelly's teams have, and get this team. Certainly, they're a playoff team, but get them to where, hey, I think Texas and Penn State are. I think Clemson could be certainly a national championship contender. This is the year they're built for because, like I said, they're going to lose a lot of these top guys for 2026.
Let's move along here, Mel, with another defensive front player. This guy, maybe, he impressed me. Keldric Faulk, edge rusher from Auburn, who true sophomore last year, Mel, first year eligible. So, by the way, that applies to a handful of the guys that we have discussed so far. They could all, on paper or in theory, return to school for next season. But we'll worry about that at a later date. But Keldric Faulk had 7 sacks last season, kind of a breakthrough performance for him. He had a forced fumble recovery. He got a PBU as well. Mel, length. This is length and versatility for Keldric Faulk. Can kind of do it in a variety of different ways. But the biggest thing for him is this: he can beat you because of his sheer size coming off the edge as well. Obviously a good athlete, has some bend to him, can torque his body, natural pass rusher with those 7 sacks last season. A guy who, because he's only played 2 years of college football, we expect the best to come going forward. Auburn has had plenty of defensive linemen come through the draft over the years. This looks like the next great Auburn defensive lineman to me.
He's got freak written all over him. What do you say? 6'6", 285, 288. 6'6",
285.
You can kick him inside at times. I mean, he's got some scheme versatility, developed that counter move. The Kentucky game, the Georgia game, the Cal game. He had some dominant performances last year for the Auburn Tigers. He's 19 years of age, turns 20 in September. Yeah, 19 years old, but he defines that what a freak is. And like I said, I like the ability that he has where you can, hey, get a matchup you see inside, kick him inside, keep him on the edge. But certainly Keldric Faulk's an intriguing guy because that kind of talent and that kind of versatility you don't see very often. Like I said, he's looking to he said, hey, 6, 7, 8 sacks. He wants to be well into that double-digit number. And based on talent, he certainly should be.
Yeah, Mel, we talk about quarterbacks. They're going to almost always define the draft, either the strength or the lack of strength in the class. But a dominant edge rusher is usually like a pretty good bet to go very high as well. I don't think we have an Abdul Carter in this class. Well, there's not one yet, right? No one has put himself in a position to be discussed the way that we were discussing Abdul Carter, who lived up to the hype and more last season. Eventually, of course, going 3rd overall to the New York Giants. But Keldric Faulk is probably the best pure edge, or best edge rusher, best pass rusher that I saw on tape in my early scouting looks to this point. A couple more players here now, 3 more in our top 10 to get to specifically. Let's go to Tennessee. Jermod McCoy, cornerback, Mel, a player who began his college career at Oregon State, had 9 pass breakups as a true freshman, goes to Tennessee last year, tied for 4th in the SEC with 4 interceptions. He had 7 PBUs as well. Mel, I'll keep this evaluation relatively simple. Very good size, very good speed, very sticky coverage skills. And, would I like to see a little bit more ferocity in the run game? Yes, but that applies to basically every cornerback not named Devin Witherspoon. But this guy, Mel, it just feels like one of those, traditional, pure perimeter cover corners. Those guys don't tend to last very long in the draft.
Let's see what type of condition coming back from the injury. How is he doing coming into this season for McCoy, formerly of Oregon State, then Tennessee? You said about attack. He attacks the ball. The interception against Alabama, the interception against Vanderbilt. I mean, he had some plays where you look at last year, what he was able to do, but then coming off of an injury, when is he back to 100%? Because McCoy has the ability, I think he showed last year, he can be locked down. And I think certainly that cornerback spot, I mentioned Avion Terrell at Clemson, but certainly McCoy, when he gets back to 100%, for Tennessee is somebody we're going to be looking at and saying, boy, he can be a first-round draft choice. How high in the first round? Like, it depends upon coming back and how he performs, then certainly how he tests once he comes out. But, McCoy, it's a shame because if he was coming to the season 100%, we'd be talking about him. You're talking about top 10, he would be in that category. But I think the injury kind of taints it just a bit because we have to kind of wait and see when he's back at 100%.
So let's get to a couple more players here, Mel. And I want to be very clear. It's not like these are the 10 and like player 11 is a huge gap from 10 to 11. It's just that 10's a pretty nice round number, and it's an easy starting place for us as we get going on this 9-month journey with all of you, because we are going to be back more than you have ever seen us here on First Draft. But number 9, let's get into the trenches here again, Mel. Spencer Fano. And Utah, he's a right tackle for Utah. They've got a pair of offensive tackles that will end up getting drafted this upcoming year. Spencer Fano, Mel? Woo, baby. This guy can move now. This guy is big, and he is athletic. The first movement skills that he made me think of when I watched him on tape, Troy Fautanu, who ended up going 20th overall in the Steelers last year out of Washington. He did Fautanu a little bit late in the process because of concerns over injury and then missed some time last year. But, I mean, just a guy who looks like he's, 65 pounds lighter than he actually is for Fano. Like, this guy can... this guy can really move, Mel. He is an impressive match and mirror right tackle. He's got all the goods to be a long-time pillar on the right side or left side of an NFL offensive line.
Yeah, Utah is an interesting team because you mentioned Caleb Lomu on the left side and Spencer Fano on the right side, who also had a year of experience at left tackle field. And this guy is a destructive run blocking tackle who can hold his own in pass protection, certainly keep that frame between the defensive end and the quarterback. Yep. His brother Logan is the defensive end on that football team as well. Yep. And remember, Lander Barton, off-ball linebacker, went back. They got a Snowden, the corner, a really good player. They got to transfer a running back in Parker, right? You think about this football team, they got to transfer a quarterback in Dampier from New Mexico. They got a lot of guys that are playmakers on this team. And these two bookends, in addition to the interior, this offensive line, it's always been, and Jim Harding, you got to give some of these offensive line coaches credit. 12th year, I believe, at Utah, Coach Garrett Bowles, right? Nick Ford and others. Jim Harding, I know they feel he's one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in college football. And he's been there now 12 seasons as an offensive line coach at Utah, developing players like Lomu at left tackle and certainly Spencer Fano at right tackle. So there's no question those two bookends, arguably the best that college football has to offer this year. And don't sleep on Utah. They're a playoff caliber team.
They're always so tough, too, aren't they? Utah, they just find a way. I don't know what's going to happen now. Cam Rising, what is he doing? Is he's not at Utah anymore, unfortunately. I love watching
Devin
Cam
Dampier is the guy. And I'll tell you what, this kid is, you talk about John Mateer. We didn't talk about him going from Washington State, right, to Oklahoma.
Ooh, baby, he's fun, huh?
That kid is a talent. I mean, his running ability, where he can make people miss and then turn it on, and he's good enough passer, certainly. John Mateer at Oklahoma, with Jade Knott coming in from Cal at running back at Oklahoma. Then you get a kid like Dampier going to Utah and giving them that dual threat ability. This kid, you know about the Heisman Trophy? There's a lot of names that are a little off the radar a little bit that could jump into that mix heavily, along with LaNorris, Sellers, and Arch and all the guys. But I'll tell you, Dampier at Utah, certainly one of those guys to keep a close eye on.
I can't wait for football. Last thing on Spencer, a little bit more weight, Mel. Got to pack that body up a little more, which, again, that applies to a ton of these guys, but they're also young. He's a junior in college, right? He's 20, 21 years old. Opportunity for him to grow. One more name here, Mel, in the top 10. And again, this is not like there's not an 11th guy that will be worth discussing. We had to stop the list somewhere. Anthony Hill, linebacker, Texas, a player who, despite being an off-ball linebacker, is a sack machine. How about 8 sacks last year, Mel? 5 sacks the year before. And this is like legit pass rushing upside. This is not just a guy who, kind of fell into some sacks after somebody else did the dirty work for him. He's extremely explosive, rushing the passer. Obviously has very good instincts as a blitzer and timing as a blitzer as well. Has very, very good speed, covering a ton of ground at inside linebacker, sideline to sideline. And Mel, the thing that I think maybe gives him a chance to end up staying in this first round conversation, because as we know, first round linebackers are hard to find, right? There's just not a whole lot of them year in and year out. We had just one this past year. It was Jahad Campbell, who of course went 31st overall to the Eagles. But with Anthony Hill, what I will say, Mel, is that he doesn't compromise size for his speed, right? He's a big, well-built linebacker who just happens to be extremely fast as well. So he pops off the tape. He's all over the place for Texas. To me, looks like a guy who could end up going in the first round.
He, to me, could be Abdul Carter because you think about Carter went off ball to edge, right?
Yeah.
This kid, they're going to use a lot. They have Colin Simmons, right? Great player, right? Who's an active player. You got Ethan Burke, right? You think about Anthony Hill. If you put him opposite Simmons, then Burke's in that mix as well. You added the 2 defensive tackles as transfers. All of a sudden now, off ball becomes edge. You're more valuable. Then all of a sudden, you're not just a top 10. You're maybe number 1, number 2, number 3 pick overall. You mentioned all the sacks. He had 8 off ball and a little bit of edge. How about 17 tackles for loss and 4 forced fumbles, in addition to 113 total tackles? He had 8 or more tackles in like 8 or 9 games. This kid was all over the field. 16th player on ESPN.com, on the rankings board coming out of high school, was Anthony Hill Jr. If he goes off the edge more, and that sack total was already 8, goes into 12, 15, you're looking at a kid at 6'3", about 238, 240 pounds, Field, becomes the guy that maybe you're saying, well, he's off ball. And if he becomes more edge, you're talking about, and they got Trey Moore is there as well. Okay. Yep. They got guys coming off the edge as well. In addition to, like I say, Anthony Hill, that's going to be a team that's going to ferocious. Now they don't have Makuba, they don't have Barron, but they got a lot of studs. And Anthony Hill Jr. is one of those guys that I think he could be in the mix to be the first, second, third pick overall. Things like I say, we say who's going to fall right for. If we see a little bit more edge with this kid, watch out.
Yeah, that's the key to me. And I said it with Caleb Downs, is that like it's not a position where you see guys typically go that high as safety. It speaks to just how rare of a prospect he is, but with a couple of things that go in their favor. And of course, if these quarterbacks either return or these quarterbacks don't meet expectations, Mel, then we could very well see some of these guys rise further.
You know, one thing, Phil, I just want to tag this.
No, keep going.
Thing. One thing was really interesting. I went back to I always like to look at the high school rankings and see. Like Peter in 2023, Peter Woods, we mentioned, was at 4. Arch Manning was at 5. Caleb Downs at 11. Anthony Hill at 16. Keldric Faulk. Keldric Faulk was at 206. Spencer Fano was at 237. Guess where LaNorris Sellers was in the top 300?
299?
294. Good guess. LaNorris Sellers with TJ Parker at Clemson was at 87. So these are guys that developed into better players than they were viewed coming out. We talked about guys in the NFL that go in the later rounds that develop into great. LaNorris Sellers was at 294, and we're talking about him maybe as one of the elite players and certainly one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. So for South Carolina, you got the guy. He was considering other options coming out. Virginia, I think, was in the mix as well. LaNorris Sellers for Shane Beamer has a chance to be really good. And some guys, like I say, Fano, 237, Faulk, 206. I got another guy, Kenyon Sadiq, tight end at Oregon, right? Taking over Terrence Ferguson. He was at 152. So there's a lot of guys we didn't talk about today. We throw those names out there. We're going to have 5 most intriguing guys for Fielding, 5 most intriguing guys for me coming up next week. We're going to have a ton of lists for you coming up this year. First Draft Podcast, Field. If you're missing this, we're started early this year. We roll all the way through mid-May. We finalize our reviews. We're here every week for you. We're going to talk nothing but draft. We're going to have list after list and mock after mock for you all season long.
Hey, my first mock draft comes out in like 3 weeks. You want to do it for me instead?
How about a co-mock? I'll help you out a little bit. How about that? I'll give a little assist to Fielding once in a while. So I'll co-author that mock for you. How about that?
Can I announce? I'm going to announce something here on this mock because on this show, because last year was first or second year doing the mocks. Or doing the full-time draft analyst. So I guess last year was second year. So it was my first time doing the way too early mock draft, Mel. And I got so bogged down on trying to find the biggest area of need for players. I'm just here to announce this right now. My mock draft, which of course is nowhere close to done. I think I've done 1 pick. Arch Manning going first overall. Is probably going to be my top 32 players and just like a slightly altered order. So much can change, Mel. We love this. I mean, you and I love this. We live for it. But trying to hold yourself accountable for knowing that the Rams in 9 months are going to need a right tackle or that the Saints are going to need a cornerback. Like, I mean, if it was such a glaring need, they probably would have addressed it in some way, shape, or form this past offseason. So my mock draft, I can't wait for it, but I want to encourage people to think of it more of keep your eyes on these 32 players plus more of this college football, not oh, wow, Field really feels like, hey, the Vikings are desperate for a tight end. That's why they have to draft this kid, which, by the way, they're not desperate for a tight end. Just an example there.
Hey, I'm already looking forward to next week's show because I want to see who your 5 most intriguing guys are. I think I got about 20 guys for 5 spots for me. We're going to have 5 different guys. We're not going to have repeat them. And next week's show with those intriguing guys is going to be elite guys, not 3rd, 4th, 5th rounders. Elite guys that are intriguing for a certain reason.
All right, I can't wait for that already. And again, a reminder, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can see us on TV, Wednesdays, ESPN2 in the afternoon. And by the way, some occasional re-airs as well. And then on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel, we love everybody that subscribes there. There's a QR code, scan it, you can get our full playlist. Greeny will be getting back into the fray at some point, but for now, you're stuck with me and the GOAT and the legend himself, Mel Kiper Jr., who probably talked, 7 or 8 times this summer? We couldn't quit each other. We just kept calling and having some fun conversations.
And I like the haircut. First time since before Christmas. I got one yesterday, by the way.
It looks great.
I had to keep up with you. So I was really long. So you can see that. The only people saw that was some of the dock bars we went to with those orange crushes. But at the end of the day, we're ready. We're all ready to roll. Football has begun. Camps are open. College football's on the horizon. And those openers are going to be phenomenal. Week 0, week 1. So I can't wait to get it started, Fielding.
Yeah, and by the way, Mel, this background for me, not my best effort, but I'm at the office today. I promise going forward it will be a lot sturdier. You guys will get only the best from us because you always get the best from Mel Kiper Jr. He's a legend. He is the man. I love talking football with you, Mel. We'll do it again next week. Thanks for watching First Draft. We'll talk to you all sometime soon.